And we have John Moore here from thelibertyman.com, and of course Tim Alexander's dropping in with an emergency report. Developments we've been seeing coming on for some time, and this is a good intro for us to comment on, John. Tim, tell us the latest report. And you've got two major news stories going on. One is dealing with the troop buildup in Russia, and the other is dealing with ISIS. Tell us these reports, please.
Yeah, I have to go. I don't want to take your time anyway. I'm going to report both of these, and then I'm going to...
You report them up on your blog, and we'll cut and paste it over so people can visit the blog on there.
But the important thing is Russia is holding a really massive so-called military exercise right on the Ukrainian border. They've massed somewhere between 33,000 and 42,000 troops, at least 160 tanks, a large number of their latest fighters, well over 100 Su-34 fighter bombers, Su-27, MiG-31s, etc. They've announced the drill. It's starting today, going through Thursday. This comes at a time when it's been reported that the junta forces are moving in a large number of multiple rocket launch systems, as well as some heavy terminally guided missiles. The two largest cities, over 1 million population in eastern Ukraine, are cut off and now almost completely surrounded by the junta forces. And Putin is kind of between a rock and a hard place. He wants to avoid physically having to go in, but he will not allow a couple million Russian-speaking citizens to be subject to that kind of intense bombardment, as well as possibly, the Nazi Zionist junta. Who knows what they'll do to these people if they get them. So This week could well see Russia invading the eastern Ukraine. I mean,
well, they're moving heavy weapons into to finally clean out and destroy the republics in eastern Ukraine, Donetsk and Slavyansk.
But keep
so the
in
Russians,
mind, this is all tied into what is happening in the Gaza war.
Well, you heard about the dead. You heard about the dead hand order too, right?
No, what?
Okay, the Gaza thing, I'll tell you what, this is on the eastern Ukraine. The Dead Hand Order last was instituted in 1983. It's an automated version of the Russian launch on command sequence, which means if there's any kind of satellite-based or other-based system that automatically detects a launch against Russia or Russian affiliates, there's an automatic launch of all land-based and submarine-based nuclear weapons in America and all of our allies. Putin did that on Thursday, that dead hand order. That's done.
Oh, you mean he reinstituted it?
Right. The dead hand order is now automated. So now they've actually moved over automatic launch sequences, which don't require, literally, if everybody's dead, they call it the dead hand order. In other words, there's no Russian soldiers, nobody underground, nobody alive. And the other major story that I've got proof now... The other big story is that we and I dug back through this because I know America has been creating bioweapons forever. The gentleman that I trained under, Dr. Robert Brown, worked at Bethesda, worked at an off Bethesda facility as well, making work on the T-virus in 1972. And all of his compatriots were actually in the building when he was homesick with the flu, and they all died at 2,000 degrees and were incinerated. America owns the patent for Ebola. America. So you got to understand that when you see Ebola already rearing its head up and now with a longer incubation period, this is a bioweapon. This is an end-time release of the death angel.
Times. It's genetically engineered. And by the way, I have something to tell you about that.
Yeah.
New York City Hospital is testing some sick patients for Ebola, according to ABC News.
Right, and of course, it also we have a ton of people who are sneaking into the country by the dozens. That there's no control whatsoever. In fact, our policy, even compared to the Canadians for Ebola with Class 4 labs, etc., is insane. We're just asking for it. And Obama last week, by the way, passed an executive order. Also, this is another wonderful thing that the Abominator did, that if anybody has, quote, any infectious disease, the government, at their discretion, can inter you into a civil detention camp and bioisolate you. Period.
Yeah. The Ebola now is essentially airborne. Through through sneezing, and the virus is now lasting a couple days in outside of the body. So the UV light is not killing. Normal UV light is not killing off the virus quickly, and the latest virus has been tweaked. So you're looking at up to 90% death rates. This is the bubonic plague on steroids.
Not even the avian flu is comparable to Ebola, where you literally bleed out every orifice after the virus goes crazy.
See, they want to use this against us. They haven't been able to, all the false flag events like Sandy Hook and so forth, they haven't been able to take our guns away from us. So they want to lock us down, give us the RFID chip, and kill a lot of us through bio war.
And by the way, if you don't submit to whatever they're going to get, whether it's a vaccine or a drug or just quarantine, and they disable people, I also found out literally... just last week, one of the people contacted me that they're now coming out in governments saying, which I already knew was a Patriot Act 1 under George Bush, that if you have more than 2 weeks of food storage, you're now considered a terrorist by the American government, the CIA, and Homeland Security.
You know?
Right.
Ultimately, you have to get to a point where you have to say you can pass all the unconstitutional rules, regulations, and so forth, but I'm an American and I'm a child of God, and you can just take your satanic stuff and go right to hell.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, well, the problem is that people want to argue with you, though.
Bill, I want to tell you about a report coming out of France today, and this is a real earth shaker. The so-called emir that's in charge of ISIS or ISIL, however you want to...
Yeah, the ISIS, which is like the play on the old fertility goddess.
Right.
Which is a terrorist, so-called Muslim organization.
Agent, and both of his parents are Jewish. He's Jewish. His real name is Simon Elliott, but he goes by al-Baghdadi. And, he's a trained actor and Mossad agent. So as this news hits the Middle East, I think it may wake up a lot of people. And remember, what's the attempt is to create a general Middle East war. And
they're pretty darn close to it.
Nightmare times right now.
Right. In fact, the attack on Gaza, the last of the tunnels will be probably finished off the next day. They've killed an incredible number of people. Children especially, but anybody. The civilians have been harmed far more than even the so-called Hamas people.
Oh yeah,
I think that
it's genocide.
Yeah, what's going to happen here is this next phase, though. What are they going to do? How are they going to get food for these people? A lot of time, they're regular commoners coming through these tunnels to give them food, anything. So, John, your comments on what we just mentioned. We have the ISIS director. We have the Ebola. Literally, U.S. government owns the patent on it. We have Obama passing an executive order last week that if you have an infectious respiratory infection, you can be quarantined against your will for any length of time. People, they want to say, Dr. Diggle, you're just crazy. How about they need to read?
Thank you, Doctor. The United States Patent Office will not issue a patent for something that occurs naturally in nature. They will not do that.
No.
Therefore, this is something man-made to have a patent on it. That's a foundational thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And why in the world would you create or make or manufacture, fabricate something that can kill 60 to 90% of the people on the planet? It's an outrage. It's satanic. It's how many adjectives can we string together here?
Exactly,
I'm already making preparations to set up quarantine for visitors to come to visit me that after a certain date. I haven't picked out the date out yet, obviously.
Right.
But once this is loose in the population, you'll see things happen that would only happen previously in a Hollywood movie or a novel.
Much worse than a Hollywood movie. The Hollywood movie directors can't smoke enough dope, inject or breathe it, or do lines enough to see what's coming. What's coming is so out of the dark bowels of Hades. People can't conceive it, and they want to spit at us because they don't want to believe that these maniacs at the top will do it. Yeah, they will. Issue. we should have no planes deplaning from Ebola countries. Now, I want people to understand this. There's 3 different factors related to what I call the plague essentials. The first is how easy is it to transmit enough of the organism to create what's called an inoculum, or enough organism to create a primary infectious state. Ebola is not that easy, actually. You have to be really damn sloppy with bodily fluids, clothes, blood, mucus, and it's not easy to spread. But the flu, if you've got an airborne flu like H7N9, which is replicating faster than any other flu virus in human history, someone can cough 50 feet away and you've got it. Whether you're in an aircraft or an open space or a shopping mall, it's going to spread like crazy. So the Ebola is really bad. We should not have anybody coming into any airports in the Western world from a country that has Ebola.
No. And if they do, all the passengers and the entire crew should be quarantined for at least 22 days, and the aircraft decontaminated by professionals who know what they're doing. It is that serious. To do otherwise is really dereliction of duty.
We did a computer simulation, depending on there's ways of putting different parameters in to see if a plague spreads, and we bought NOAA, which is a North American, supercomputer time up in Boulder. It was a NOAA computer. And what we discovered is basically, if a plague coming from Cairo, Egypt to Oklahoma City, within 90 days it would affect 93 million people and spread to 90 countries. Now, I think Ebola has the potential to be really bad, but to be honest with you, yes, it's real lethal, it's 90%, but a lot of people think, well, if it's 90% lethal, it's much worse than something that's 30% lethal. Not. And the reason is, if something is, say, 100 times or 300 times much more easy to spread, i.e. the flu, even if it's 20% or 15% lethal, you're going to kill a lot more people with that than you are with Ebola. It's not easy to spread unless you're incredibly and purposefully stupid. This is easy to stop Ebola. Easy schneezy. No one should be able to get on a private airliner or public airliner and fly here from one of these countries. And if they fly to a secondary country, we should have a way of tracking them so they can't get on another flight from another country and sneak in that way. Because if people are clever, they say, well, we're not going to fly in directly from Liberia. We're going to fly to such and such, in the Middle East, and then we'll fly from there to London, Heathrow Airport. Before you know it, they're in Chicago. And if they are bleeding by that time or coughing up enough virus, because they're spreading virus for 3 weeks, that's not normal. We're talking about normal incubation is 4 days before you get violently sick and then you die. Right. And 90% of the people that get this virus, they die. And they die releasing a lot of bodily fluids and blood and mucus and everything else. And it's not easy to get Ebola. A lot of people don't realize that. It's not really easy. You have to be really, really, really sloppy with handling bodily fluids and have improper equipment, like you don't have face shields, you don't have sterilizing unit, you don't have ultraviolet curtains, you don't have reverse contamination, you don't have sterilizing units for clothes so you can throw gowns off and get another gown on if you have to go to the bathroom, put a new gown on. The thing is, they just don't have these, so you know what they're going to do. They're going to just try to be sloppy about it. Well, sloppy doesn't work. Sloppy gets you and everybody else killed. So what I think is going to happen is that Ebola is like a test. Ebola is the fact that they're responding with zero functional, normal, common sense behavior that we would have done 30 years ago tells me they want a crisis. They want people freaked out. And when the really big plague, which is probably something like H7N9 or H5N1 new version or H1N1, by the way, these people coming up from Central South America, they're coming up with a new version of swine flu. People are not even seeing this coming out of left field. They see resistant TB. They see them coming up. At the same time, by the way, the chikungunya virus is coming up all the way as far north as New York State. They see all kinds of other bugs they're worried about, but really, the H1N1 flu, the swine flu, and the H7N9 and the H5N1, these are the ones that are potentially 300 or 400 times more likely to spread with just a cough 50 feet away. That's going to kill a lot of people if it's only 10 or 15% mortality rate, because the infectivity is so much dramatically more. And you can go for weeks shedding virus, infecting a heck of a lot of people before they get very, very sick. And the first break will happen, number one, when you run out of respiratory, intubation ability to put them on ventilators. The second break will when you run out, those people get so sick that the ventilator doesn't work, and you have to put them on heart-lung bypass, which is called ECMO. In Britain, when the H1N1 flu hit Britain in 2009, how many ECMO machines they had in Great Britain? 5.
Really?
They had 5 machines. They could crest that with the first wave on the first day with just doctors and nurses. So what I think is going to happen is just the Ebola as it currently is and our stupid policies, which are just guaranteed, not only here in Britain but elsewhere. Canada is actually moving further and faster than either Britain or America to try to do their policies. Probably somebody will make a phone call to Canada and say, what are you doing, Canadians? You're making us look bad by doing something right. What's wrong with you?
Well, if they can do it right, why can't we do it right in England?
Because they want to do it wrong. They want to make sure they scare the hell out of people, and they need a body count. And they want people, because to be honest with you, Ebola is small potatoes compared to a swine flu or an avian flu with a lower death rate but a far higher infectivity rate. That's small potatoes. If you've got something with a 15 or 20% case fatality rate and it spreads 300 times more easily, you've got something really deadly that'll kill hundreds of millions, if not billions of people. Ebola, eventually, you just quarantined everything off after the first number of things, and no flights come in, and everybody that comes in from countries that even suspect those, they're going to be sent off to quarantine for 22 days. You'd put a stop to it within a month or two. The Ebola. Not so with avian flu, with one of these flus. By the time you think you've got a control of it, the virus, even if you had a vaccine, which isn't going to be the case, or you had an antiviral, which, by the way, the newer versions of the virus are completely resistant. H7N9, H5N1, H1N1 are resistant to the drugs like Tamiflu. This virus is going to continue to spread and kill people like crazy everywhere. International commerce is going to stop colder than a dead mackerel. And people don't understand, they don't realize that we're heading toward this. And when I hear reports like I hear from Ron Paul, and he always says things that are exaggerated, and it's like he's somehow the pundit, like, the American dollar's going to crash with the BRICS nations and everything. No, that's not true. We're not heading toward an economic crash. We are heading toward the mark of the beast. We're heading toward an authentication world where you can't have cash in your pocket. We're heading toward where most of the money in the world has always been the Fed Reserve note. It's not the American dollar, it's the Fed Reserve note, which is controlled by European bankers. And that system, unless there's an agreement with the so-called BRICS nations, they have nothing to sell to us. They don't have an economy. If Russia can't sell to the West and Europe, if China can't sell to the West, if South Africa can't sell to the West, they don't exist. They have no economy at all. And people don't get this. They don't realize they don't have enough money to even start this so-called BRICS thing. They put $100 billion, that's small potatoes, that's nothing. So what's coming is catastrophe, economic downturn. They're going to try to frighten the heck out of you, because what they really want to do is frighten the money out of your control. So it's not in your bank account anymore. It's divots in their supercomputer, and everything's authenticated with your biometrics, which is, read your Bible, Revelation 13. The mark is what's coming. And I can't tell you when, but this is a step toward it. Welcome back. The first prep I tell people is to prep yourself. Get yourself off the toxic drugs. Get yourself in shape. Get yourself getting away from the idea that you're not personally responsible for your health, your food supply. Start getting a greenhouse. Getting yourself ready for the fact that there's not going to be a collapse of the dollar, typically what people expect. You might see devaluation of the dollar, but in fact we're moving toward an economy where the world control of this, you call biometric currency, will be America. America has weapon systems that are so far beyond Soviet Union, Russia, any other nation. It's insane, including biological weapons, space-based weapons platforms, every kind of evil you can imagine and not imagine, these characters have already. Mind control weapons. People say, oh no, they can't do that. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time wasting time telling you specifically stuff that, to be honest with you, I don't think you want to know. But you really want to know what's going on. Is this a prelude to a move toward grabbing more of our rights, as they try to tell us you'll only be secure if you give a whole lot more of your rights over? So not only do you take your shoes off to get on an airliner because some idiot had wires hanging out of his shoes and he's so-called a shoe bomber,
Right.
Or you can't have more than 200 mils of fluid or something because there's a gel bomber that was creating some form of gel-based peroxide explosives, which will do nothing other than maybe give you a first or second degree burn in the bathroom. It's not going to ignite anything. This is all done, just like the Sandy Hook and these other things. Ebola is purposely being incompetently handled to frighten the hell out of the public to accepting almost any biological control by the government. And that means handing over our sovereignty to the World Health Organization and the United Nations, which are already by treaty passed long before Mr. Abominator showed up. He's just the latest actor in the guild of so-called presidential punching bags that are there for the globalists to put out for us to punch at, when in actual fact it's a bunch of boardroom maniacs and Satanists that are running the world. And for those people who think that, oh no, they're not going to take the cash out of your pocket, they will bail in to steal the money, they will authenticate every currency, and if you don't behave, they just need to press Alt-Delete, and you don't have any money. You can't buy or sell, save you have the markets. In the Bible. Just get it there, okay? Don't realize that we're not making any of this up. In fact, 99.9% of the news we propose you read, which is a very important skill I learned at 3, most people by grade 2 or 3 at least, that if you just read what's public out there, like Obama just passed an executive order, you can be quarantined for any, quote, respiratory infectious disease. That's in the public domain.
Right.
You don't have to invent any of this stuff. John, what's your comments about what's coming? Because I see war building up. The Russians they're gathering, they're clenching that big Russian fist. And they're going to come down, these guys in Kiev, probably within days, not weeks. I think that they're going to clobber the hell out of them. And basically what Putin said is they see it as a physical World War III threat, that level of threat, to post NATO troops in Kiev and western Ukraine, moving into eastern Ukraine as a war game. And that's why the dead hand order, that's why the Russian troops are there, that's why the Duma, their Russian government, met. And there was no word coming out, because when you don't hear words, it means something really bad is going to happen real soon. So the fact that Israel is trying to clean out the quote, rat's nest of little bottle, I call these bottle rockets coming out of Gaza, means they're expecting a much wider war that they want, because they want to clobber the heck out of all the surrounding nations with nuclear weapons and advanced weapons that we gave them gratis, so they can take most of the territory of the Middle East, including a big chunk of Iraq, and expand to greater Israel. That's where I see this going. I see it insanely moving toward a Middle Eastern war, a war with Russia that we cannot win, and China, and all the other nations that are affiliated with them. Where's this going, John? Where do you see it?
Well, two things. First of all, there's a high likelihood that the United States military will get involved either in the Middle East or with the Ukraine because of various treaty alliances that we have. We will have a legal obligation to come to the assistance of these people. But going back to the Ebola, I gave some very specific things for people to do this morning. First of all, to cut down on your sugar intake. Second, cut down on your monosodium glutamate, MSG, intake. Eliminate all soy products except fermented soy products such as soy sauce from your diet. Eliminate all artificial sweeteners from your diet, including all soft drinks, whether artificial sweeteners or not.
Right.
Cut back on tobacco intake, or eliminate if you can. Cut back on your alcohol intake. All those things will help you to have a stronger immune system, in addition, of course, to using the nutraceuticals that you have at your website, Doctor. Yeah,
the Nutridyne, Allicin, Silver 100, Berberstatin, all these things that are going to, Alamax, Alamed, will knock out any of these pathogens. And NIOSH Mask, we have our defense wipes that will kill all capsulated RNA and DNA viruses, all pathogenic bacteria. People need to get ready now. If we get clobbered like we did in 2009, and that was just like a test. The swine flu back then was a test. It was released from a Baxter lab to a local village right beside the lab. They came up again from Mexico. And you remember, these young people that are arriving here, a lot of them are infected with a newer version of the swine flu. And all we need is a swine flu that doesn't have a case fatality rate of 1 or 2 or 3%, but say 15 or 20%, that's easy as heck to spread and has a long incubation period. That's why Ebola is so dangerous now, because it has a long incubation period, but it's so deadly that it is far more dangerous than it was before. So if this does come to America, which, I'm guessing that there are probably already index cases that are spreading here, and we aren't going to know for probably about 2 weeks to a month. if it does start spreading, it will be what's called a geometric progression, which means it'll keep on increasing and increasing its velocity, and then by the fall, if we do have an Ebola breakout here, it's going to get really bad. And by that time, closing off the airports won't do a damn thing.
Right.
It'll be too late. It'll already be spreading. My guess is, though, the real danger comes with some version of the avian or swine flu. I was told when I went in March 16th, 1997 to Zurich, Switzerland, I got documents smuggled out of the World Health Organization headquarters by physicians that were right in the boardroom with me at Human Life International. They gave me a big box of these documents of the invention of the AIDS virus, the invention of a vaccine to cause sterility to attack the trophoblast of pregnancies, which they had a lawsuit that actually they lost against the World Health Organization, against the Philippine women, 70,000 Philippine women that were sterilized by it. And the worst of all was the resurrection of the 1918 flu, and it created a super flu, an avian super flu, that would be a new swine avian flu, and they've tried to resurrect it multiple times going back to the 50s. I got the actual documents. I had the doctors who were there, the witnesses who stole the documents, who smuggled them out of the World Health Organization headquarters in Basel, and gave them physically to me alone. So this is not secondhand information, people. It's not like reading somebody else's article. And I worked with the FBI and CDC in Operation Top Off and Dark Winter with Reserve Admiral Hughes and the federal government, the infectious disease at the University of Colorado. That's part of the reason why they try to smear my reputation. And if you Google my name, you'll see so many crazy things. You'll think, well, this guy's so crazy. He's so dangerous. Don't listen to anything. He's killing patients. He's doing this and that. It's all crap. It's all crap. And the reason why it's crap is because they had two alternatives: kill me or ruin my reputation. And believe me, I had people telling me that they were going to take out contracts. They said, you're going to be met with a lot more violence than you can imagine. So don't think you can do it. I can do stuff too. I got friends in Delta and Special Forces. So, you have to have a bit of an attitude to even survive. In fact, if you have an attitude, you're more likely to survive if you act kind of calm and easy pushover. They're going to kill you quicker than spit. And there's lots of journalists out there that they just decide, well, we can just kill this guy. I'm sitting on a mountain of all kinds of stuff in so many areas. I've only talked about less than 10% of what I know about anything that's even inside the government. And I'm going to start dropping it on them. How's that? I'm going to drop it on them. Everything from U.S. Space Command to plagues, to all the other things they're doing, and the actual underground city in Fulton, Colorado, for the central node of the actual world authentication system that's totally controlled from the U.S. government and the globalists. I've been inside the array. Not secondhand information, firsthand. So, look out. It's coming. It's like, I'm sure when you were in Special Forces in Vietnam, or you do forensic work now and you actually have to do criminal and other cases, if people haven't walked in your boots, if people haven't seen or know what you know, it gets beyond disgusting for people to attack. When they're putting themselves and everybody else in dire straits, when they don't even have the skill set to actually go and read publicly available literature like, WorldNet Daily, RT, AP Newswire. I mean, 99.9%, we don't even have to quote classified sources, but they always correlate directly with what we have from the inside. So we have inside stuff, it's like, this never doesn't make sense with what's going on the outside or just reading the regular journalistic articles. There's tons of it out there. Even the stuff that's published by World Watch Institute, Agenda 21, the United Nations reports. If you just publish and read the actual documents that they publish, it's like, duh, it's all right in your face. So, I don't have any tolerance for people who want to attack me. Not because I'm have any, because I got a really, really thick skin now. It's beyond titanium thick.
Right.
My attitude is, I grieve for them being stupid enough to think that they feel good about attacking someone who's trying to save their physical soul and their body and their family from catastrophe. Because this isn't going to be pleasant, and it's going to be a series of birth pangs. It won't just be one disaster. It'll be a series of disasters where they're going to test us with Ebola, and then they'll probably defeat it after a few months, after they kill a whole lot of people. And then they're going to test us with some other bug. They had the swine flu back a few years ago, 2009. And when the real big super plague arrives, which is almost certainly going to be a version of flu, because that's the best candidate ever. That's what the actual treaties were signed for in 2005-06 with pretty well every nation on Earth. People aren't prepared. They don't have self-quarantine ready. They don't have food or water. They don't have self-protection. If you go out in the streets after they declare the state, you're an enemy combatant, you're going to a civil detention camp, and if someone in that camp has a radiological contaminant like cobalt-60 or a biological weapon on them, you're going to get it. You're going to get sick, and you're very likely going to die. And people who want to argue with us and say, well, we think we have a right to argue with you. You don't. You're not qualified to argue with me because of the scientific and technical background or what I've done with the government. You have no right to argue with what I've actually seen firsthand. And you have to read the actual published articles by people who tell you what's going on. So when I hear Ron Paul saying the economy is going to crash, no. They're going to crash it purposely so they can create a whole new authentication world currency system. And then they'll create a new world order with Russia and China as part of the deal. But at that point, everybody on Earth and every nation will be enslaved to this damn system. After they scare the hell out of us, kill a lot of us, poison our oceans with Fukushima they're not fixing, and poison our air with geoengineering and jamming up the normal climate patterns. So we're finally getting some rain here in Southern California because it's coming up from the south, which is, by the way, non-radioactive, and I have my monitor on 24/7. There's not a twitch of a change in radiation. That means because it's coming from the south. So when we had waves of radiation from the north, it would double or triple, boom. So they're blocking all of that because they know darn well a population with people getting bloody noses and diarrhea, they're going to freak. But the population right now, by and large, they're busy. You know, I put that on last week, their foil with Weird Al Yankovic to make people kind of laugh a little bit at themselves. Ha ha ha. Tinfoil hat people. But really, to be honest with you, all you have to do is ask better questions. We don't want you to believe anything we say. We're not here doing bizarre entertainment. I'm not Dr. Deagle because I'm a retired ex-doctor doing this. I consult every day with doctors, patients, scientists, top labs, teach every day, consult. And I can tell you, I do so many different jobs and hats. We have contacts on the inside, and they're freaked out too. We're talking about rich people, government people, people in the CIA, the National Security Agency, people that are good, and there's some very evil people that have got the levers of power that are damn certain they're going to pull us off. And, you know, the Middle East, we get a love letter. I saw this picture on the in front of a magazine. I couldn't believe it. It showed a box of bombs being sent over by Obama to Netanyahu, and on top it says, please don't bomb the Palestinians anymore. And he put it in a little letter and dropped it in the top with the bombs. I mean, come on. We don't want to stop the carnage in Gaza. Obama is given every weapon possible, so their actions, you have to speak louder than their words. So, John, how do people prepare now? Because the first preparation is number one, to pray, to clear out your mind, and to stop thinking, well, if I attack John Moore, or if I attack Deagle, or Alex Jones, or anybody else who's telling them the truth, I'll feel better about how things are, and they're all just nuts. How about you need to do two things? You need to pray, number one, and you need to read, number two. You need to stop spitting out venom against those who are trying to save your hide. Okay?
Well, Don, you're absolutely right. Spiritual preparedness is the foundation upon which everything else is built. After that, you mentioned reading. Of course, read. You need to educate yourself. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Dr. Deagle's word for it.
Yeah, don't take
anything. Do your
own
homework. Do your research. Yeah. Do your homework. Educate yourself from reliable sources, reliable, verifiable sources, as to what we're really facing and how to mitigate what we're facing.
And you can mitigate it easily. If you follow what John recommends, and he has his website, thelibertyman.com, if you listen to our experts that come on the program, if you look at all our nutraceuticals and our preparations and our emergency kits like the Ready Store and, Prepare-Wise foods and all the stuff, there's no excuse for you not having even minimal preparations for a month or two. But I can't believe how people just think this is all just bizarre. Like, oh, we're just like late night entertainment during the middle of the day. No, we're not. We realize unless we have community, unless people start to believe what we're saying and do even minimal stuff, like have 3 weeks of food and water, have self-protection, understand that the government is not your friend, and if they say they got a vaccine against Ebola because Monsanto gave it to them, run. Do not let them stick it in your damned arm. Don't don't assume that this is going to be good for you. It'll guarantee that something really bad is going to happen.
I agree. There's a quote from one of Jim Rawls' books here. It says, rule number 1, never trust anything the government says.
Yeah, exactly.
I have it on the wall in my office here.
Yeah, actually, I got a little quote for you. This is a Deagleism quote. When dealing with the government, I found out from either the VA or working directly in these various projects with the federal government, the Space Command, etc., on an individual day, I was not certain whether the dominant force operating these people was evil or stupidity or both.
Good quote.
That's scary.
Yep.
The combination of evil and stupidity or both. And it's always the case that the ones at the very top get promoted because they have the right combination of evil and stupidity and willingness to do things to their fellow Americans and fellow citizens of Earth or the planet itself that no rational person would do. So that's what's disturbing about it. And as Einstein said, evil will not destroy the world, but good people who allow it to happen will.
There's lots of variations of that.
Yeah.
And it's very true. That's why they're repeated.
Whether it's Einstein said it or not, I mean, it's a true statement. And when I hear these statements by Russia about the dead hand, and I hear about the troop there and cleaning out Gaza, where they're just within a day or so of actually all the tunnels gone and all these bomb shelters, this is going to get nuts really soon. We're very near what's called the 9th of Av, which is a day when things really bad happen to Israel. The actions of the state of Israel are going to guarantee that everybody in Israel, if you haven't left the country, you're going to die. No, I'm telling you, people, if you're living in Israel, you better get the heck out of there now, because whether it's 6 months, a year, or 3 years from now, you're in grave danger because your leader of your country, Mr. Netanyahu, is going to get all of you killed. I don't care if you got nuclear weapons, bioweapons, you grab all the stockpile from America, you are going to die very quickly because you're bringing on hundreds of thousands of weapons that you can't defend against. You're ticking off Russia and Iran and every other country. This isn't going to go well for you. And all your so-called allied countries, by the way, in Europe, that think NATO can just plop in a military in Kiev, these cities in Europe are targeted by Iran even with Shahib 3 missiles, and they can hit them with biological weapons, fuel air bombs, and other things. You don't even need Russia. If they think it's going to be a walk in the park to just crush these Muslim nations into dust, it's too late. It's not going to be a walk in the park. And I don't know what to say. I want people to start preparing. I want them to get off the toxic drugs, get their nutraceuticals in their body, get themselves physically back in shape, get themselves looking really at, do I need water supply? Do I need this or that? Because if the power goes out, if there's no public services, if the police have to join the militia because there's no standing army to protect you, but of course Obama will say he's going to bring in martial law. What is he going to do? Bring in Russians or
the Russians
Mongolians?
Are already here. That's not even.
Yeah, but they don't have enough. I mean, if they had 74,000 Russians, like, come on, you couldn't control one big city like Houston. How are you going to control a country of 3 million square miles? Forget it.